UFC 319, Dricus versus Chimaev, possibly one of the ugliest looking fighters on the roster versus a guy who will give you a really, really good 5 minutes, and then after that, it's a bit of a question mark. So we'll see. We are here. We're going to be talking about some of the pros and cons of both athletes. Let's first start with Dricus. As far as the striking, again, none of this may look pretty, but there is a strategic element behind it, and one thing that's very important that Dricus can play quite well, he did it very well against Izzy, is splitting the shots. So no secret that it's difficult to fight Izzy at the range that he likes, which is that nice long range outside of his, at the end of his jab. Dricus did a great job getting his head off the line and throwing I believe, overhand right around Izzy's jab and crashing in and closing that distance on the way there. Now, who knows if Dricus wants to be closing distance on Chimaev, but regardless of whether he does or not, that that splitting is a huge tool, and this plays really well into Khamzat's game. Gilbert Burns rocked Khamzat with a shot that was around, over top of Khamzat's jab. We'll get into that a little bit later on, but Khamzat does tend to return his hands a little bit lower after he's done punching, and there are opportunities over top of his shoulders on the way, kind of following his punches back to his chest. The next element of Dricus's game that is, again, not pretty, and I wouldn't call this fundamentally sound, but again, it works for him, partially because he has very, very long arms, is his sprint boxing. So when he throws several shots as he runs forward, maybe the first shot doesn't hit, but if you retreat straight back versus his sprint boxing, it's a matter of time before you get clipped. He's done this to Izzy, he's done this to Till, he's done this to tons of other guys, and so you have to be moving your head off of the line, and you have to be taking some sort of angle if you're not trying to get clipped with that sprint boxing. It doesn't have to be pretty to still clip you and put you out. A lot of guys like to pull against DDP, and that generally lets him continue forward with his offense because you're pulling straight back. And when he keeps walking you down, walking forward, it's just a matter of time before he clips you. Against Sean, he did, and this is something that could be a good tool against Khamzat, is the stomp kicks. Those low stomp kicks, a lot of the John Jones type knee stomps, could be a threatening, kind of a deterrent against Khamzat's takedowns. Now, even if this doesn't, end in a John Jones type, almost like you're injuring your knee, it's still an excellent tool to momentarily back somebody off of you. And again, I think that Dricus's most difficult part of the fight is going to be the first 5 minutes. Khamzat tends to blow his load and try to wrestle as hard as possible for those first 5 minutes, and he ought to be doing a little bit more conservation against Dricus unless he's able to get Dricus out in that first round. Now, let's talk about some of the ground game of Dricus. The body lock, I believe against Till, against Izzy, I'm sure against a couple others that I can't think of, but the body lock is a pretty, again, it's ugly, and sometimes it's just strength that gets guys down, but when he gets a body lock, he does decently well getting guys down. I don't think that that's going to be enough to get someone like Khamzat, but it is a strong point in his game, and transitioning that down to the ground, he tends to, if he, and this is something that's similar with both guys, attempt a takedown, guys turn their back to you, and then you kind of ride their back. Whether you put a hook in or not, both Khamzat and Dricus like to ride on that back control, and they'll either start trying to find the wrist control, or they'll look for striking opportunities. Now, when Dricus is on the back, he is he's really good at looking for strike opportunities, but this kind of pairs with his wrist control. I don't like the term Dagestani handcuff. I think it's kind of whack, but, marketing, so you know what it be. But anyways, he's really good at trapping a wrist Sometimes it'll be the near side wrist. Sometimes he'll kind of reach across the opponent's belly and grab that opposite wrist. And if he can do that, he will try to take that opportunity to use his free hand and just hammer away at the face. And this is an especially bummy position because it kind of just leaves you one hand to defend, but you don't know where the shots are coming from because they're coming from behind you, since Dricus has that back ride control. He did a great job against Till with this, and it's similar to, I believe, the sometimes he'll get that cross wrist grip, and it looks similar to, I believe, Igor Vovchanchyn in Pride got this against Satake, and they were up against the ropes, and Vovchanchyn reached in front of Satake's gut, grabbed his opposite side wrist, and then used his free hand to just start hammering away at Satake. These are great positions to start putting in good work as far as striking on the ground. Now, it's a matter of, if he can even get to those positions, but if he can, I imagine that he'll be able to put a lot more striking damage on Khamzat than the other way around. Now, as far as the takedowns go, neither guy has a ton of great setups for their takedowns. But one thing about Dricus, and a lot of people talk about how strong he is, it is wild how he can finish takedowns in some of the bummiest positions possible. Everyone in wrestling practice will tell you, stuff their head when they're going for takedowns. You can stuff Dricus's head right underneath your nuts, and he will somehow still be able to suck your legs in or suck your hips in and score. Again, you got to be so strong to be out of position, out in such bad position, and still be able to finish. So that's something to be mindful of. And look, no, it's nowhere near as technical as Khamzat, but I mean, he can finish guys, finish takedowns on guys from positions that aren't terribly technical. Will he be feeling it in his low back when he's 60? Probably, but he's getting dubs now, so good for him. Now, on the ground, he's really good at keeping the head pinned down, whether it's with a really, really heavy crossface. He'll flirt. Sometimes his crossface, so if he is on the top position in half guard or side control, his crossface looks like it's gonna, and those of you guys who are unfamiliar, a crossface is when you are on top of someone in top half guard or in side control, and your shoulder that's closest to their chin or their jaw basically just drags across their jaw, and you're trying to pound their jawline into the canvas underneath them, putting all of your body weight, your pressure into that jaw. And it's similar to like a face crank. Some guys who are inexperienced, they'll tap just from that pressure alone. The shoulder pressure from these cross faces from Dricus are great at kind of immobilizing guys, making it tough for them to start building their base back up. Sometimes he'll kind of flirt with a mother's milk position, and those of you guys who don't know the term mother's milk, it's a little bit crass, so forgive me. I try to keep it relatively PG on these podcasts or these audio recordings, but it is basically putting your tits in their face and smothering them. And so that's a great, again, not the most technical, but amazing top pressure when he is on top. When guys do try to build up, I believe we've seen this with Robert Whitaker, we've seen this with Darren Till as well. When guys try to build up from that flat-backed supine position and they turn to their side, to turn to face Dricus so they can, maybe get up to their knees or get into like a dogfight type position against Dricus, he's really good at threatening submissions, threatening things like the Darce, which against Robert was really good at immediately putting him flat on his back. So these types of threats, even if they don't amount to anything, are good for just reestablishing position and keeping the opponent down flat. As far as, there's a lot of cons, and I'm not even saying that to be a hater. I like DDP. I don't care if he's ugly. He makes it work, so good for him. I can still say that he's not necessarily fundamentally sound, but he's getting dubs and he's getting paychecks, so good on you. Please buy me something off the dollar menu, son, because you clearly doing well. On the feet, sprint boxing has worked, but it's still dangerous, especially against a guy like Khamzat who wants this fight on the ground when he's being smart. You are completely giving up your base when you sprint box, and all you can really do is run forward. So if someone is to just come underneath your sprint boxing, they can put you in a good bit of trouble. Darren Till was able to kind of hunker down, come underneath the shots. Didn't really do anything with it as far as a takedown. Brad Tavares did a great job. If you guys have not watched Dricus versus Tavares, one of his first fights in the UFC, I would 100% recommend that you guys go watch that, because the things that Tavares did well, I think he did it in the most technically sound way of all of Dricus's opponents. And what Tavares did versus Dricus' sprint boxing was lower his level such that the punches kind of flew over his head, and he would throw a counter shot around those punches. So he'd lower his level, throw like an overhand right, and Dricus basically just ran right into them, which is, again, another danger. So you can run right into strikes, or you can run into someone's takedowns since you're essentially giving them your hips. His tendency to high guard is also a dangerous one. Izzy was doing a great job taking advantage of this, just going downstairs to the body. Understandably, given Khamzat's style, the higher your elbows get, the less your arms are in play for defending takedowns. And so your hips are now open, and a guy like Khamzat can simply bring the high guard up and then shoot right under it to get to those hips. Now, Dricus likes to start a lot of fights with low kicks. That can be dangerous, again, against a shooter like Khamzat. Again, this is all depending on if Khamzat wants to keep this fight where he is strongest, or he wants to try to trade. Well, then I don't know what to tell you. It could well be a bit of an easier night for Dricus, but we'll see. Now, another thing we mentioned in the sprint boxing, when we were talking about the pros of Dricus, how if you pull straight back in a straight line, Dricus is at his strongest. But if you can get your head off of the line when he is walking forward on his offense, you can generally make Dricus miss, and because he's not the most fundamentally sound in terms of being able to keep his feet under him, he'll usually lose his stance and be kind of off balance when he misses. Now let's talk about Khamzat, and before we do, I will be putting a video version of this on Patreon. We'll be able to get a little bit more into detail, specifically on Khamzat's back control and how he uses the wrists to set up his transitions and set up his off bounces, things like that. So first, let's discuss the feet. Khamzat does have a tendency to want to sit and brawl with guys, especially if he gets clipped. He will tend to sit there and try to strike back with you, which can be good, can be bad. One of the things I do like that he plays is a big shot off of a level change. So he will play a short level change and then throw a more looping right hand. And not only does this get around straight shots that are coming at him, but it is more difficult to see his right hand, because off of a level change, and you can picture yourself sparring with someone, if you are the same height as that person, the lower they get, the lower their hands are getting. And at a certain point, their hands get so low that they're outside of your vision window, the south end of your vision window. Then when they come up out of that level change, they've already begun launching their right hand. And at that point, by the time you're able to see their glove, they have so much momentum behind that hand that it's generally going to clip. And he's really good at this. So I think it is a big threat. He has, relatively basic striking when he's going like at a regular pace, but he'll tend to brawl back, as I was mentioning earlier. He can get into trouble in situations like that. We talked about Gilbert being able to clip him with the right hand over top of his jab. Now let's talk about his takedowns. So his takedowns are not set up very well. However, one thing that he is really good at is using the takedowns with the cage. If he starts his takedown in the middle of the cage, he runs and he is able to get a hold of you. So if he's able to get a hold of your knees or get a body lock, whatever it may be, he runs you into the cage. And guys who have really good sprawls will sprawl, get down blocks in. Those of you guys who are not familiar with down blocks, that's hands that are in front of their shoulders to stop good wrestlers from being able to have that forward momentum. Guys like Usman had great down blocks, but Khamzat was able to essentially just keep walking them until their back hits the cage, and then all of the defenses collapse. The down blocks collapse because they're just getting crushed against the cage, and then Khamzat can continue on trying to finish the takedown, whether with a transition or just finishing off the double leg. On the ground, when he gets, so he has a very similar takedown format to Dricus in that they'll shoot a takedown, and the second you turn your back to them, they will just work their way around to the back, and sometimes they'll put one hook in, maybe sometimes two hooks in, but they're plenty happy to ride the back control and start fighting for the wrist. Now, where Dricus is will take more opportunities to start landing strikes on the ground when he's on your back, Khamzat is really good at finding that wrist control. Again, we mentioned that Dagestani handcuff. Sometimes he will get the near side wrist control. Other times he'll feed his arm across the belly, similar to Dricus, and get that opposite side wrist control. And then from there, he'll either go for strikes or he does a double underhook gable grip, and that's a good position for off-balancing guys when they're trying to stand up. He was great at this against Robert Whittaker, who did a good job defensively. And when he would try to work his way up to a standing position, for example, when he would take a step and he was on one foot and one knee, we would see Khamzat gable grip around Robert Whittaker's chest and almost sag his body off to the side. It almost looked like he was trying to lose control of the back, and because there was so much body weight off on Robert's side, it would drag him back down to his butt, making it difficult for him to stand back up. That whole system, the gable system and the wrist control system, is definitely something I'm going to be talking about on the Patreon because there's so many good details on that. Now let's talk about the elements of Khamzat's game that can get him in trouble. His takedowns, again, as we mentioned, really don't have much setup. The majority of the takedowns, or the extent of the setup, is just feinting a right hand and then just shooting. So if Dricus is doing his film study, he will see that there's very little behind it. Much of the takedown threat is simply the historical threat of getting taken down to the ground by Khamzat. So many guys go into it. Perhaps they're just constantly paranoid about the takedown, and then he shoots and then gets a hold of them, and their worst fear kind of comes to life. So good film study, which I imagine Dricus is doing. There's definitely ways that you can either hit Khamzat on his level change for the takedown, or just make it very difficult for him. For example, using constant footwork, making him circle, since Khamzat's primary angle or trajectory on the takedown is just straightforward, trying to get you to the cage. Usman did a great job with this in terms of down blocking, but also circling away instead of just going straight back. And that I believe in the second or third round made it quite difficult for Khamzat to be able to finish. I don't even think he finished too many takedowns after that first round. Kamaru just, again, the adaptation was amazing. Matter of fact, when Kamaru did defend those takedowns, the down blocks were a factor as well. So getting those arms in front of Khamzat's shoulders, getting the arms on the inside of Khamzat's shooting arms, and blocking, and then eventually getting your distance and circling out. On the feet, Khamzat tends to prefer a high guard if guys are coming in, and we saw this with Gilbert. Was able to take advantage of the body by first conditioning Khamzat to throw up that high guard, and when Khamzat has that high guard up, Gilbert would throw like a right hand to the body, so he is susceptible to that. Also the right uppercut, which is it can be good and bad for Khamzat. If the opponent's head is low and he throws a right uppercut, good on him. However, he tends to get a little bit uppercut happy, and that can get him in trouble, just because if there's no real setup behind it and the opponent is not having to defend something and is not otherwise preoccupied, a left hook can clip him on the uppercut. Again, I believe Gilbert was able to find a left hook versus Khamzat's uppercut. And lastly, his hands tend to either start low or come back low, and this was actually how he got rocked versus Gilbert. So if Dricus is doing his homework, a similar split that he was able to do when getting in on Izzy would come in really handy against Khamzat, just because it is a tendency for him to not be as defensively sound when he is retracting his punches. And that's all, guys. Who do you guys have winning? Comment it below. If you guys also, if you have any questions, go ahead and comment it below. Patreon.com/@boringbreakdowns. I will also link that below, and I will catch up with you guys on the next one. Thanks so much. Peace.